Hey guys, what's up? Matt here, and today I have for you guys the Week 5 weekly recap for PICA Season 3. This week we had the last of the division matches, at least for this set. There'll be rematches later on in the season, but this was everyone faced the last division rival they haven't faced yet, and this led to some pretty interesting results. So with that being said, let's go on to our first and probably one of the closest matches we had this week. So next up we have the Philly Shuckles facing off against the Richmond Quagsires. And the Richmond Quagsires actually managed to break the Philly Shuckles winning streak and win 1-0 against the Philly Shuckles. Both Bob and Dom played very well, but I think Bob just wasn't prepared for Lucario plus Superior. Crocodile did its standard fare of setting up hazards, then dying, like he did back against the Detroit Magnetons. And then Bob had an interesting plan of having Hazard stack Nidoqueen to wear down Dom's team, which was actually a very good idea, considering Dom didn't bring his Magic Monster in Mega Diancie or any of his hazard removal, so those hazards were there to stay. However, he just didn't really have enough for Lucario and Superior. Superior could continually Leaf Storm without too much hassle, as Rotomo, which resisted, can't really do much back, and Heracross. And the only answer he really had to it was Heracross, which was weakened throughout the match, so that it could take on, so that Superior could take it on better. And Lucario kind of just was able to clean up some of his weakened mons. I'm pretty sure he brought a setup Lucario, but he didn't even need the setup because Extreme Speed was just able to pick off things like Thunderstarian, which were at low health, as well as Zoroark, which weirdly enough near the end actually outsped Superior because Superior was only sped correct to beat out Thunderstarian and not Zoroark. So that was pretty interesting. Overall, I think both these players played well. I just think Dom prepared a little bit better. Even though he didn't bring any hazard removal, he brought the correct threats to defeat Bob. But Bob's still leader of the division right now, but the Richmond Quags are currently tying record, just a little bit behind on differential. I think Philly Shuckles have a plus 11 differential, and the Richmond Quagsires have a plus 8, I believe. So, with one more good win on the Richmond Quagsires part and one loss on the Philly Shuckles part, it should... Honestly, as long as Richmond Quagsires win a lot higher than the Philly Shuckles for the rest of the season, the Richmond Quagsires should be able to take their spot. But who knows what will happen for the rest of the season. So, moving on from that match, we have next the Detroit Magnetons versus the DMR Shadow Absols, or at least we would. The reason I say or at least we would is because this match actually wasn't played out. Unfortunately, Colton had some family issues to deal with right now, which is there's nothing we can do about that. So he decided to forfeit the match so that the DMR Shadow Absols will win in a 3-0. So I'm not sure how this match would have played out. It was probably going to be close. Both teams have a pretty even matchup against each other. But we can't really theory mon about this since the battle never really happened. Hopefully during their rematch the battle can actually happen and everything will be fine. But sometimes real life interferes and there's nothing we can do about that. So with that, let's move on to the Indus Valley Infernapes versus the Denver Dashers. So we have the Indus Valley Infernapes facing off against the Denver Dashers, and this ended up being a 4-0 victory for the Denver Dashers, mostly because the Indus Valley Infernapes couldn't handle Nidoking. He didn't really bring much that could handle Nidoking, if I'm being honest, and he didn't play well around Nidoking. Starting with the former, maybe instead of Alakazam or Rotom Heat or Conkeldurr, one of those three, he could have brought Snorlax to this matchup. Snorlax has a decent matchup against his team. It's not the best, I'll admit that. But if within a Solfest or a specially defensive Curse set, Snorlax could have done well against this team. Not to mention that actually gives you a switch into Nidoking, because Nidoking's Sludge Wave shouldn't be doing too much to a why am I forgetting his name? Snorlax, thank you. And then Vaporeon, if Snorlax is Assault Vested, Vaporeon could Wish Pass to it and keep it healthy. So I definitely think wow, I'm stuttering. I definitely think that Snorlax could have been brought to this matchup to try and handle Nidoking. After him playing around Nidoking, he Will-O-Wisp with Rotom Heat, and after Rotom Heat took a Sludge Wave, he then switched out to Bisharp to be immune to it. Then after switching out, then he switched out of Bisharp into Vaporeon to take an Earth Power, which crit, which was kind of important. Which was, I'm not sure how important that crit was, considering how Vaporeon died. You know, it was kind of important. I think, I'm not sure. And then afterwards, he switches out into Mega Venusaur, who then takes a Sludge Wave, and then he switches out into Bisharp, who then gets killed by an Earth Power, and then he goes into Alakazam, which gets Sucker Punched and killed. Basically, this whole entire thing could have been circumvented by letting Rotom Heat die, bringing Alakazam to threaten out Nidoking. That's basically what could have happened. That's basically all that needed to happen. You didn't need to weaken your Vaporeon or your Mega Venusaur or let Bisharp go down, which was needed to take out the Cresselia. After the mishap with the Nidoking, he brings in the Denver Dashers bring out Belly Drum Azumarill. They set up a Belly Drum, kill Vaporeon, kill Mega Venusaur, and then they mess up against Conkeldurr, because normally Azumarill outspeeds, but he forgot about that in the heat of the moment and decided to go for Aqua Jet instead of Play Rough, which is a misplay because he actually would have won the game outright with Azumarill if he had just gone for Play Rough against the Conkeldurr. You know, if he didn't miss. Which, seeing how that match was going, he probably wasn't going to miss. But yeah, after that, the Denver Dashers then send out Cresselia, and then Cresselia cleans up the rest of the game. So, yeah, honestly, not very well played by the Indus Valley Infernape, but also the Indus Valley Infernape did suffer a decent amount of hacks during that match. Not too much hacks that I think in this matchup, the outcome would have still been the winner being the Denver Dashers, just because of the team that the Indus Valley Infernape brought and how they were playing, but you know, I think the differential would have been smaller without the hacks. And a note to the Indus Valley Infernape, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but yeah, I'm just saying that you didn't play your best this match. You played pretty well during week 2, 3, and 4, but this week you kind of dropped the ball on planning and playing. But hopefully next week when you face off against the Richmond Quagsires, you can play and plan better. And as for the Denver Dashers, can you please stop winning? You've taken my spot as the division leader, please. But that's not beside the point. The Denver Dashers did play very well, and they definitely did deserve the winner in this match. So with that being said, let's move on to the next match, which is actually my match. So next up we have my match, as I said before. Washington Redskins versus the Iowa Focus Energies. And the reason why I said the Denver Dashers took my spot is because I actually lost this match. The planning on my part was not that great. While the Iowa Focus Energies did plan very well against my team, Entei just really destroys my team, if I'm being honest. Like, Extreme Speed plus Sacred Fire basically destroys everything on my team besides Regirock. And even then, Regirock can get burned by Sacred Fire, which is pretty detrimental. I did see a few ways I could win. I brought a very interesting set where I basically brought a Mega Scizor with Swords Dance Baton Pass to try and Baton Pass 2 Swords Dances to Dugtrio in order to take on the rest of his team. But this was more of a half-baked plan, considering that 1, Mega Scizor kind of gets stopped by Entei whenever it comes in, and 2, it probably wasn't the best idea to Baton Pass something like Swords Dance, considering Entei does outspeed me, so every time Entei comes in, I have to waste a boost that I just got and switch out on something like Regirock. So that plan was definitely half-baked on my part. I did not think that through all the way. But even in my test matches, I did win by other ways as well. Like Tornadus Incarnate kind of destroyed the teams that the people who I tested with made for Nick. But in this match, it didn't really do too much. What it ended up doing was it ended up killing the Chestnut, which is pretty good. Chestnut ended up being sub Leech Seed, so you know that was a pretty interesting set. I'm glad it wasn't Belly Drum, but honestly, my team can handle Belly Drum Chestnut decently well. And it just ended up dying to Togekiss. Togekiss ended up killing a lot of mons. First up, it killed Regirock with a Grass Knot, then it killed Dugtrio and Tornadus Incarnate with Fire Blasts. So Togekiss was Scarf Togekiss was a pretty good bring on his part. But yeah, the real pivotal moment in this game was when Toxicroak was in against Blissey. I thought he'd switch out into Gengar, because at that point he'd been predicting a bit. He didn't always switch out into Gengar against my Toxicroak. He sometimes switched out into Fortress. He sometimes stayed in with whatever mon he had. So I kind of thought he may go into Gengar at that point, because Gengar was his normal switch into Toxicroak. I didn't think he'd want to risk Blissey, because Blissey was a bit necessary to take on the Greninja well, as well as just to do well in as well as to, I'm trying to formulate the words, as well as just to heal up the rest of his team with, oh well, he didn't bring English, he brought softball. I'm not forming my words well. I just thought he would need Blissey for later on in the match for things like Greninja, as well as possibly having Fire Blast for Mega Scizor. Turns out he didn't bring Fire Blast for Mega Scizor. He brought Psychic for Toxicroak. And so I ended up gunk-shotting Blissey, which does a clean 60-something%. And then he just Psychics and kills Toxicroak. Yeah, not my best moment there. Honestly, yeah, maybe I should have cross-shot, but I was losing a lot of momentum every time he switched into Gengar, because then I'd have to switch out into something like Greninja, because I couldn't risk getting Will-O-Wisp with any other Mon, so I'd have to go into Greninja. And Greninja was already at below half at that point, so I had to make a play and try and whittle down Gengar by going for the gunk shot. Unfortunately, he did make a good play and predicted me to overpredict, and he just goes for the second and kills off my Toxicroak. At that point, I had a feeling I couldn't win that anymore, especially after I missed calcs and thinking Dugtrio could just take out Blissey after revenging to take out Blissey, but I was calculating for Life Orb when I was sashed. So Earthquake just ended up not killing Blissey. He broke my sash, and then I basically lost to Entei. Because, well, first off, he goes into Togekiss to kill Dugtrio. Then I kill Togekiss with my Mega Scizor. But then I just lose to Entei at that point, because at that point I only had a Greninja at 34% and a Mega Scizor and just a Mega Scizor, and Entei could just Sacred Fire the Mega Scizor and take out the Greninja with Extreme Speed. I had to have gotten very lucky. What had to have happened was he'd have to have missed a Sacred Fire twice, and I had to have crit Bullet Punch twice. And then I would have killed him with the third Bullet Punch. And then I would have had a chance of winning that game. But, you know, I didn't want to win that way, but that would have been very interesting if that match went that way. Nick would have been so salty if that would happen. But yeah, congrats Nick on toppling my win streak. Hopefully I can get some revenge during a rematch, but who can say. So, moving on from that, let's move on to the Diamond Division for their first match. So, we have first off the Transylvania Trevenants facing off against the Oneonta Quagsires, and Dylan won this match 4-0 in an interesting way, I guess is the best way to put it. The match was pretty simple, up until after Mega Blastoise kills Volcarona with, of all things, Hydro Cannon. Alright, I guess that's for if Volcarona sets up too much, I guess. I'm not really sure on that one. But anyway, after that, to take advantage of Mega Blastoise needing to recharge, Dylan sends out the Fable, and then starts setting up Cosmic Powers, which is very bad. Vec of the Transylvania Trevenants first tries Azelf to try and kill Clefable, but Clefable ends up just killing off Azelf eventually with Moonblast, interestingly enough, not Stored Power. Now, I understand why he would want Moonblast over Stored Power. Vec has an Umbreon, so of course Stored Power won't affect it. But maybe instead of Thunder Wave, he probably should have brought Stored Power, because you managed to set up all the way with Cosmic Power, and Stored Power would have been hitting very hard with that. But you just decided to opt for Moonblast and no Thunder Wave. Make the game even longer, I guess. But yeah, after that, I believe he sends in Trevenant afterwards, and then begins to do a setup war where Trevenant goes for some power punches, gets to +6, and then for a couple turns they're just hitting each other. Trevenant rests up with Rest Lumberry, and Clefable is soft-welling up all the time. Eventually, though, Trevenant just gives up. Vec just gives up and sends in Landorstarian to try and explode on Clefable, but it only does 33%, which Clefable easily heals it back up from with Moonlight. Or Softwell, I mean. And then he tried to use a setup Purugly, but it's Purugly. It's not going to do anything. I think a +1 Home Claw's Iron Tail only did 16%. I think it was +1. Might have been even +2. Eventually, though, Clefable is almost out of moves at this point because of the PP. Exactly why I think you should run Stored Power if you're running a Cosmic Power set. So he then switches out Clefable into Mega Absol to take out the Purugly. Kyurem revenges the Purugly with the Mega Absol. And then afterwards, Zapdos comes in. Milotic comes in first off to do some phasing with Dragon Tail, and then after that, Zapdos manages to set up a sub against Trevenant, and then Zapdos just kind of wins the rest of the game from there. So it was a weird match, to say the least, but in the end, Dylan managed to win. He had some weird sets, so did the Trevenants, but in the end, the Quagsires managed to out-weird the Trevenants, I guess, is the best way I can put it. Even though Zapdos set was kind of normal, it was still like a sub 3 attack. I think it was a sub 3 attack set. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting match. Yeah, I'm still kind of trying to pick up my words about this match. Hopefully the Transylvania Trevenants can bounce back from this. And good job, Dylan, for getting a pretty big win this week. Congrats. So let's move on to the other Diamond Division match. So next up we have the LA Slowking facing off against the Berkhamsted Bastiodon, and well, it was a 0-4 team facing off against a 4-0 team. So the outcome could have been predicted, but you know the LA Slowkings could have pulled an upset. They have a team that could have. Like, Weavile honestly does have a really good matchup against the Bastiodon's team, although the amount of priority the Bastiodon have on this team is pretty impressive, so I'm not sure how well Weavile actually would have done if it was used correctly. But Weavile ended up in the match, just dying to Heatran's Flash Cannon after it was sent in as a sack in order to preserve Shuckle, which I honestly don't understand why he brought Shuckle to this matchup. It honestly didn't help in any way against the match because of Mega Sableye. Mega Sableye just utterly stopped Shuckle from doing anything. And, you know, you probably should have realized that, but that's beside the point. Anyway, he also let his thing that could honestly really kill the Mega Sableye, Mega Gardevoir, one get paralyzed, which is, you know, that's a little bit harder to prevent. Killing Uxie with the Shadow Balls, you know, was a decent play. I'm not gonna fault you for doing that. What I am gonna fault you on is leaving it in on a Heatran with Flash Cannon when you have a frickin' Lantern that you could send in. That was probably a really stupid move on your part, Hero. And I'm sorry if I'm insulting you in any way, Hero. Just that, you know, you should really think about your moves more before you make them. You shouldn't leave things in the die, and you shouldn't sack things off that you need later on in the match, and you shouldn't preserve stuff that do nothing, and you shouldn't preserve stuff from dying that will end up dying anyway because it doesn't have the matchup. Personally, I think both his planning and his playing this match was very poor, and you know he just couldn't really match the Berkhamsted Bastiodon. Bastiodon brought basically what they needed. Heatran was for stopping the Mega Gardevoir, which it did perfectly. Mega Sableye was just for stopping the LA Slowking's team in general, because, man, does Mega Sableye actually have a really good matchup against the LA Slowking's team. Garchomp managed to kill off the Excadrill. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Heatran also, I think, I want to say it also killed the Lantern with an Earth Power, I want to say. But I'm not exactly sure on that. No, it did not. It killed the Weavile. Right, I made that point earlier. It killed the Mega Gardevoir and the Weavile. Personally, I think the LA Slowkings need to work on how they play and plan a bit more. I understand they don't have that much time on their hands, but still, use the time that you have to practice a bit. Maybe test out your team. Maybe get a second opinion on how you're building. Just ask someone for help if you feel like you're not playing or planning as well as you can, because it's not wrong to ask someone for help. I know you don't have that much time on your hands, but if you do want to do well in this league, I do recommend talking to someone to help improve how you play. As for the Bastiodons, they remain 5-0. They remain the only team undefeated. You know, as happy as I am for them, I do want to see them eventually lose, because honestly, undefeated teams are kind of, I don't know. I just don't like seeing a team go completely unopposed, and I also don't like seeing a team that goes 0 in whatever number of games there are. So hopefully, eventually, the LA Slowkings can pick up a win. In the meantime, though, they remain 0-5. The Berkhamsted Bastiodon are 5-0, and I am excited for the Berkhamsted Bastiodon's next match, and hopefully that can shake things up a bit. Other than that, let's move on now to the final division, the Pearl Division. So next up, we have the Sequim Malamars facing off against the Shamrock Sinovers. And this ended up being a 3-0 victory for the Sequim Malamar against the Shamrock Sinovers. And yeah, they both prepped very well for this matchup, the Malamars having Sub and Toxic on Volcanion to handle Porygon 2, as well as for Porygon 2 having Trick Room to make sure Mega Ampharos can sweep late game. But I think the Malamars kind of just played a little bit better than the Snovers. For one, I think the Snovers made a pretty big misplay with Skarmory. Skarmory was in against Espeon, which went for Psychic on the Skarmory, as Skarmory went for Defog. Yeah, Psychic managed to score a special defense drop. Now, in my opinion, what he should have done was gone into Celebi, as Celebi would have taken Psychic fine, and then he would have preserved Skarmory to probably roost up on something like the Diggersby or the Archeops later on in the game. Instead, he let Skarmory go down, and you may say, well, Espeon was packing Espeon could have gone for Empire Fire to also deal huge damage to Celebi. Honestly, the Celebi doesn't do much this game, as after the Skarmory goes down, he goes into Dredagon to set up Stealth Rocks, and Espeon just Psychics that, and then he goes into Celebi to take the Psychics. And then Espeon goes for Signal Beam and kills the Celebi. So in the end, Celebi manages to die anyway, so I think that he probably should have he probably should have switched out into Skarmory. He probably should have switched out from Skarmory into Celebi, as without that, he doesn't really have a switch into Diggersby, and as you can see from him getting 3 kills, Diggersby managed to sweep up a lot of his mons, especially in the late game, killing Klefki and Dredagon, and only being scared out by P2, which probably would have lived a hit from that, but he also needed P2 for a bunch of other mons, like Noivern, as well as Volcanion, so yeah, keeping Skarmory around would have probably been nice to handle the Diggersby. That's beside the point. I think the real interesting mon for this week was definitely the Archeops that Andy brought. The Archeops ended up being a support set with, if I remember correctly, Acrobatics, Taunt, Stealth Rocks, and I believe Defog was the last move. I'm not quite sure on that last move, but this managed to end up taking on the Porygon 2, as earlier in the game Porygon 2 got Toxic by Volcanion. And so Archeops was able to stall out all the Trick Room turns on Porygon 2 and taunted it to make sure that it couldn't set up another Trick Room, which could have potentially meant that the Mega Ampharos could have swept late game if the Trick Room was up. Depending on whether or not it could have 2-hit KO'd the Rotom Wash, I'm thinking it might have, especially since the Rotom Wash was toxic, but I can't be too sure on that. Either way, this ended up being a pretty good match to watch, and I think both these people planned well. I just think that Andy played a bit better. So, let's move on to the final match for this week. So, we have our final match here. The Vesperkin Park Rangers versus the Gotham Golbats. You know, a 3-1 team versus an 0-4 team. You'd think that the Vesperkin Park Rangers would win, but the Gotham Golbats are better than their score would make them seem. And so, the Gotham Golbats managed to beat the Vesperkin Park Rangers 3-0. And you know, it was a pretty close match, all things considered. At least close in some sense. I'll explain. It was a pretty back and forth match for a little while. Empoleon managed to take out Hydreigon. Tyranitar revenged against the Empoleon. Crobat managed to finish out the Ferrothorn, which actually, the first turn I might want to mention was a very interesting first turn, since Slowking Flamethrowered the Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn Power Whipped the Slowking, leaving them both at low health. But the Slowking managed to come away better, as Slowking does have Regenerator. Anyway, thanks to that prior damage, Crobat did kill the Ferrothorn with a Brave Bird, and then Gliscor died to an Ice Fang. Yeah. Also, Hippowdon also got burned by Victini's Sacred Fire, and then got taken out by Primeape's Seed Bomb, so, you know, pretty interesting. Most of the walls on the Gotham Golbats side have fallen, while the Vesperkin Rangers lost a very good wall breaker, as well as Hippowdon, which was pretty good for walling things like Primeape and Victini, and Megalotaria, depending. But the Gotham Golbats did have a trick up their sleeve, and they actually brought what was it called again? Cotton Guard. That's what the move's called. They actually brought a Cotton Guard Mega Altaria, and the Vesperkin Rangers weren't quite prepared for a Cotton Guard Mega Altaria, at least a max specially defensive one. At least I believe so. It took Ice Beams from Slowking pretty well. So, yeah, a Cotton Guard Mega Altaria was managed to wall the rest of the Vesperkin Park Rangers team. And, you know, if Crobat managed to get a crit a couple of times on the Mega Altaria, this match might have been different, but, you know, crit's only a 6% chance, I believe. Interestingly enough, Megaltaria managed to get burned not once but twice with Flamethrower. One against a Crobat, which kind of mattered, considering that really weakened the Crobat's ability to chip down the Megaltaria. Although it was 10%, and this was a very long game, so eventually Crobat was probably going to get burned, or Megaltaria was going to get crit, either or. So the coin flip ended up being for the Gotham Golbats. And then the other one, which didn't matter as much since Megaltaria could take already Ice Fangs from Megatariantar, as they would have only done like 28%. At least that was the roll that would have happened if he wasn't burnt from the Flamethrower. And then Megaltaria could easily kill Megatariantar with a Hyper Voice, so that one didn't really matter, but it still kind of hurt to see Flamethrower burn twice. Especially for Socrates, who have to experience that. Anyway, after Tyranitar went down, Megaltaria kind of just cleaned up and killed Stoutland and Crobat. Slowking actually died to Toxic while trying to take on Megaltaria, so that kill went to Empoleon. So yeah, it ended up being a 3-0 victory for the Gotham Golbats, but if they didn't have the Cotton Guard Megaltaria, it probably would have been a victory for the Vespertine Rangers. They're in a pretty good position before the Megaltaria came in and started Cotton Guarding. I'm sure Socrates will bounce back from this, maybe not next week, but definitely probably the week after. Next week they're facing off against the Berkhamsted Bastiodon, so that's going to be a really good match, but I'm not sure who's going to win that one. If you go by record, it should be Berkhamsted Bastiodon, but the Vespertine Rangers actually have a decent matchup against the Bastiodon, as they don't really take ground very well. They have some things to take on ground, but ground is one of their weaknesses to the team. They do have Rotom Fan and Whimsicott and things to resist Speed immune to it, but I still think that the Vespertine Rangers have the better matchup. But we'll see next week what happens there. Anyway, let's move on to the standings. So, with in the Ruby division, the Philly Shuckles are still in the league, even after losing their streak now. They are currently 4-1 with a plus 12? I think that should be plus 11, I think. No, it is plus 12 because they only won by 1. Actually, they only lost by 1, so it is plus 12, not because they were plus 13 last week. So the Philly Shuckles are 4-1 plus 12. The Richmond Quagsires are 4-1 with a plus 8 differential. They're pretty close. If the Richmond Quagsires get a really big win this week, they could pull ahead of the Shuckles. The Marshano Absols follow 2-3 with a minus 4 differential after winning against the LA Slowkings in a 5-0 victory, and then getting that forfeit win from the Detroit Magnetons. The Marshano Absols are actually looking in a better position, but they have to wait for some more people to lose if they want to get a playoff spot. And then last, we currently have the Detroit Magnetons 1-4 with a minus 7 differential. Kind of sad to see them so low, but in the end, I think they can still pull it back. It's halfway through the season, but it's the Philly Shuckles, Richmond Quagsires, Denver Dashers, Washington Red Shells, Iowa Focus Energies. Anyone could really screw up and allow the Detroit Magnetons to try and take their spot. For the Sapphire division, we have a new leader in the Denver Dashers, who are 4-1 with a plus 10 differential, 1 differential point ahead of me. And I'm the Washington Red Shells, 4-1 with plus 9. He just barely overtook me. Following that, we have the Iowa Focus Energies, the people who beat me, 3-2 with a plus 3 differential. And then we have the Indus Valley Infernapes, 1-4 with a minus 1 it's 1-4 with a minus 5 differential right now. The Berkhamsted Bastiodon followers, 5-0 with a plus 16 differential. They are currently crushing it right now. The Oneonta Quagsires follow 2-3 with a minus 10 differential. The Transylvania Trevenants are next, 1-4 with a minus 13 differential. And finally, the last placer in the LA Slowkings, 0-5 with a minus 15 differential. The Vespertine Park Rangers are next. The Vespertine Park Rangers are still in first, even after losing in the Pearl Division, 3-2 with a plus 8 differential. The Squid Malamars follow closely behind, same record, but 6 differential off with a plus 2 differential. The Shamrock Novers are in third, 2-3 with a minus 6 differential, still more than able to catch up to them. And the Gotham Golbats are still in last, but after a win this week, they can definitely pull it back and try and make a playoff run. They're 1-4 with a minus 8 differential, I believe. So, with the standings done, let's move on now to the MVP race. So, starting off at first, we have a new MVP just because of alphabetical order. Surprisingly enough, it's Blissey of all things. If you asked me in the beginning of the season, I would have never said the MVP was going to be Blissey at any point in the season, but it currently is 8-2 with a +6 differential. Owned by the Iowa Focus Energy. Nick's doing really well with Blissey. Surprisingly enough, he doesn't normally like Bulk. Afterwards, we have my MVP, Latias, also 8-2 with a +6 differential. And then following, we also have another +6 differential. The Richmond Quagsires Keldeo, who is 7-1. It's not 8-2, so it's not ahead, but it still has the same differential. Continuing on the list, we have. Let me just pull it up. My computer's lagging a bit, so let me see. Let me see the MVP race right now. We have, if I remember correctly, the next one should be Mega Sableye, who is also 7-1, owned by the Berkhamsted Bastiodon with a +6 differential. Afterwards, we have Mega Scizor, who dropped down. He dropped down to 6 last week, but has been brought up to 5 now. 8-3 with a +5 differential, owned by me, of the Washington Redshills. Dom Superior is next, 7-2 with a +5 differential. The Philly Shuckles, Suicune, and Thundurus are 7-8 with the same record of 6-1 +5. The Porygon Z, after the Haxie sweep from last week, still holds an MVP spot, 5-0 with a +5 differential, owned by the Denver Dashers. And finally, Garchomp holds the last spot, 6-2 with a +4 differential, owned by the Berkhamsted Bastiodon. So, with that being said, that ends the weekly recap for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, good for you. Glad I'm making someone happy with these videos. And I will see you guys in the next weekly recap. Goodbye.